Hello guys, today we're going to study 2.5 transformations of functions. First, let's take a look at algebra's common graphs. So if we have f of x equals c, a constant, you're just going to have a horizontal line. Pause this video and take a look. Then also we have a linear function right here, and the absolute value function, quadratic function, square root function, standard cubic functions, and the cube root functions. So my recommendation is you take a look at all these functions and then try to memorize them, what the basic function look like. So let's take a look at the vertical shift. Again, you can pause the video and take a look. So the main thing is we need to know vertical shift just when you have y equal to f of x plus c, and that will be shifting c unit vertically upward. And then if we have f of x minus c, and then you're going to shifting vertically downward. Let's go ahead and take a look at example 1. So use the graph of f of x equal to absolute value of x to obtain the graph of g of x equal to absolute value x minus 4. So before we start the graphing, you should realize we have absolute value minus 4. That is the formula of, it's the same form for the second one right there. Okay, this is the same form. So that means this is the vertical. Okay, this is going to be shift down 4 units. So also we need to know the basic graph f of x equal to absolute value of x. So I can make a chart. So I'm going to have x, and then I have f of x equal to absolute value of x, and then you're going to have an ordered pair. So since this is absolute value, I'm just going to plug in 3 points. Alright guys, I did it really quick for this f of x equal to f of x. So I'm going to plug in those 3 points. So we have negative 1 1, I have 0 0, and then we have 1 1. So I'm going to graph this really quick. Okay, I'm just going to write it down. F of x equal to absolute value of x. Then once we have this, we're going to graph g of x, which is shifted down 4 units. 1 2 3 4. Okay, 4 down. Alright, so that is our g of x equal to absolute value of x minus 4. So then we're down for example 1. So first graph f of x, the basic graph, which is really beginning we had a common graphs. You need to try to memorize those. If you can, at least plug in a couple points and then graph f of x, and then after that just follow the vertical shift rule. And then in this case, since it's minus c, right, and then we shifting down. If it's a plus c, we're going to shift up. Okay, you're done example 1. Alright, let's take a look at horizontal shifts. For you, the main part you need to memorize, I'm just going to highlight this part. So if we have f of x plus c, then this is going to be shift left c units. If we have f of x minus c, this is going to shift to right c units. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at example 2. How can we apply these horizontal shifts? So again, this is saying to use the graph of f of x equal to square root of x to obtain the graph of g of x equal to square root x plus 5. So you have to realize it's very different than this. If you realize the square root x plus 5 is under the square root, okay, that means we are applying for this f of x plus c. Use this horizontal shift. Okay, this is completely different than square root of x plus 5, which is your f of x plus c form. In this case, you are dealing with vertical shifting. Okay, so they are not the same. That is something I want to mention. Okay, now let's go ahead and work on example 2. So you should realize this is the form of f of x plus c, so which means this give me move to the left 5 units. Okay, so we're basically using this rule right here. Let's go ahead and see how we graph this. So first we need to graph square root of x. You need a couple points to graph this. We can do again, right? The very similar stuff. You plug in couple points and then you find your ordered pair. So I'm going to have a 0, 0 and then 1, 1 and then 4, 2. So I'm going to do just really quick. Once we have this, let me just label it. On your test quizzes, please try to label which graph you're graphing, okay? So once we have this, because this rule f of x plus c tells us this graph has to be shifting left 5 units. So I'm going to count from here. Let me use a different color, use blue. So I'm going to count 5 left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have this point. I'll count this one as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm shifting this as well. Okay, it's going to be right here. So now I'm going to connect those points. So I just shifted 5 units to the left. Okay, on your test, make sure you need to show your work. Okay, if you don't show your work, I'm sorry, you're gonna get 0 points. You must make sure you're definitely gonna write this down. Okay, you need to graph this f of x by plugging a couple points. It then tells me this is shifting from left to 5 units. And then make sure you're going to write down this graph is g of x equal to square root of x plus 5. What you also can do, here let me show you. So from here, from the step 1, you have these all the points, right? And then you can do this way as well. So I have those 3 points. So if you realize every single term, you're just going to shifting minus 5 because we're shifting 5 units. All right, minus 5, minus 5, minus 5. So that's another way you can show work. So that is the 3 points, right? Negative 5, 0, and then negative 4, 1, and then we have negative 1, 2. All right, let's look at example 3. Example 3, we have a combining horizontal and a vertical shift. So we want you to use the graph of f of x equal to x squared. So again, you do the same thing to plug in at least, for a parabola, you need 5 points. But if you plug in 3 points, that's fine with me. You're doing the same thing. You plug in the points. I'm going to skip that step. So I'm just going to write it down. So we use the same method to graph f of x equal to x squared, find the ordered pair. So we're going to have, if you plug in, okay, we're going to do really quick. You're going to have a 0, 0. We're going to have a 1, 1. And then we have a 2, 4. Okay, so doing the same thing here. So we have these 5 points, and then we're going to connect them. Alright guys, I know it's really far from perfect, but the idea is you graph it by using ordered pair. So once we have that, okay, so we look at this first part. X plus 1 whole thing squared, that is the form of horizontal shifting. Okay, so this means we're going to shift left 1 unit, and then here, right, is outside, that will be down 3 units. So we're going to have a left 1 unit. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look again. So what is this? It's a horizontal shifting. That is the form of this. Okay, so that is left C units. Okay, and then here the green part is f of x minus c form. Okay, and then that is down C units. Okay, so that is where that come from, if you want to recall this part. So once we have this, we're going to go ahead and shift to the left 1 unit. So we're going to move this everything to the left. So here I'm going to use a red color. Alright, so we're going to move each point to the left 1 unit. Everything is 1. Alright, shifting. So here again, let's try my best to graph this. Alright, so I just shifted everything to the left 1 unit. Okay, if you think about this again, when you're shifting the left, all you're doing is moving the x. So if I want to write down all the points at beginning, I'm just going to use a couple points. Alright, negative 2, 4. So that is the 0, 0. I'm writing down this f of x equal to x squared. Okay, I plug in a couple points. Obviously, I plug in 5 points. I'm just going to write it 3 points here. Okay, what I did is I did left 1 unit. So all is happening is subtract 1 for the x. So everything else is the same. So let me just write it down. Alright guys, I just did it really quick. It's f of x. That is the couple points. And then I subtract, since it's moving horizontally, or subtract 1 for all the x. And then create a g of x. So g of x, let me just use the red color. So once we have here, then we also have to bring this graph down 3 units. From there, so I'm going to bring down 3 units. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. Alright, so I'm doing the same thing to here. 1, 2, 3. And then here we have 1, 2, 3. So I do the same thing for every point. Again, since you do have a math Excel, what I want you guys to do is you need to know how those points come from. Okay, so you need to know how to show work. So when you're completing homework, if you struggle with graphing on your math Excel, what you can do is you just send me a picture of your work, and then I'll give you the points back. Okay, so here is h of x equal to x plus 1 squared and then minus 3. So let me also write down the g of x. So here we have the g of x equal to x plus 1 and then squared. So from there, if I want to write down what's happening, you were just changing the y-axis. It's just going to be 4 minus 3. So that is my h of x. Everything just subtracts 3. So you can double check the graph definitely the same. We have negative 3, 1. We have negative 1, negative 3, and 1, 1. Okay, so that is how you graph this. Okay, reflection about the x-axis. The graph of y equal to negative f of x is the graph of y equal to f of x reflected about the x-axis. Okay, so thinking about something like, I don't know, maybe a mountain or something. I don't know, Mountain Fuji. I guess so thinking here you have a river, or let's just say it's a lake, and then you have a reflection. Okay, you have a reflection. Obviously this is not perfect. Alright, anyway, so if we have negative f of x, and then we say that is the reflection about the x-axis. Okay, so that's something you need to remember. Let me use this color, so maybe you can recall this is just the lake. Alright, so let's go ahead and try the example 4. So example 4, reflection about the x-axis, we have f of x equal to cubic root of x. So in this case, again, you can plug in a couple points. Alright, so since you guys already done this many times, I'm just go ahead and write down what's going to happen. Okay, so we're going to have a 0, 0 for sure. So we're also going to, I'm going to take a cubic root. I'm going to plug in a couple points. I'm just going to have a cubic root of 8. So if we have 8, and then we're going to have, right, if I plug in x equals 8, and then here we're going to have a 2. And if I'm going to plug in negative x, negative 8, and then we have negative 2. Alright, so that is the original graph. Of course, you can plug in more points here. Alright guys, here we have the graph. Okay, so I can plug in these points if I wanted to. So once we have this, and then all you have to do is, if we were talking about reflection, right? Here, I think this is my mirror. Okay, this also is reflected about the x-axis. Okay, if I have an 8 and 2, so here we're going to have definitely going to have a negative 2, right? So we're going to have here that same thing, we're going to reflect. So then I'm going to have my final answer is going to look like this. Once you finish, I want you to make sure to label which graph. Okay, so here we're going to have our g of x, and then the blue color. Alright, and then here we have the original graph, f of x equal to cubic root x. Again, this is the reflection, right? So that is the form. It's right above it, so I'm not going to rewrite it again, okay? Right, this is very straightforward. Let's go ahead and move on. Next question. Reflection about the y-axis. So here we have, if we have f of negative x, let's use a different, maybe use green. If we have this case, and then we're going to reflect about the y-axis, basically we're talking about this line, okay? Reflection about this line. So here, we use the graph of f of x equal to square root of x to obtain the graph of h of x equal to square root of negative x, okay? This is the exactly forms under the square root. That's why it's a reflection about y-axis. Okay, so we already graphed this type square root of x. So we're going to have something like this: 0, 0, and then we have 1, 1. Then we also use the 4, 2. So once we have this, and then we realize it's a reflection about this is like a mirror. So I'm just going to go ahead to reflects this, okay, and then we have right there, and then we connect the points. Okay, there we go. So we have reflection about your y-axis. Try some homework. Please ask me questions if you struggle with any type of question or you do not know how to show work. Okay guys, thank you for watching the video, and see you guys next time.